Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Erin Smith, and I'm the Program Manager for Alumni Events at the College of Engineering and Applied Science. I'm excited to be here today with CU Engineering alumni and owners of FlyteCo Brewing Company, Eric Serani and Jason Slingsby, along with engineering alumnus and current aerospace instructor Bobby Hodgkinson, for this first Buff Brewers virtual happy hour. We certainly recognize that this is a strange time for all of us, and we hope that these virtual events will provide an opportunity to bring our engineering alumni together, even during social distancing. I invite you all to grab your favorite drink and follow along with us for this interactive happy hour. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our alumni brewers, Eric Serani and Jason Slingsby. Jason received his Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering at CU in 2011, and Eric received his Bachelor's and Master's of Science in Aerospace Engineering also in 2011. They met and bonded at CU over their love for aviation and home brewing, and together opened FlyteCo Brewing in Denver last March. We are also joined today by another one of our CU Engineering alumni, Bobby Hodgkinson, who received both his bachelor's and master's degree in aerospace engineering in 2011. Bobby is currently an instructor at the Ann and H.J. Sneed Aerospace Engineering Sciences Department at the college. Eric, Jason, Bobby, thank you so much for joining us today to share some of your story and guide us through our happy hour tasting. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much for the introductions, and thank you for letting me be part of this Buffs Brewers virtual happy hour. And of course, thank you to the, how many people we got? 36 participants out there, so they're steadily coming in. That's great. Thank you all for joining us from all over the country, and I hear even some people from outside the U.S., so that's fantastic. I, for one, am hoping that more of these happen throughout the summer, mostly because it gives me the perfect excuse to drink some great beer in my gym shorts, which doesn't get to happen all the time. So Eric and I met at CU several years ago, probably at one of Eric's famous aerospace study / keg tapping parties. The beer at those study events was a hodgepodge of the beer in the silver can. It's slightly cheaper, more difficult to sip relative in the blue can. And sometimes Eric's home brews. It was always a treat when Eric finished one of his home brews and decided to share it with all of us. In all honesty, back then, my college-age brain, taste buds, and motivation, they weren't quite mature enough to appreciate the complexity and art of Eric's home brews. I do remember the first time I did try Eric's beers, though. I think it was a red ale. I thought to myself, well, this isn't exactly Coors Light, and playing flip cup or beer pong with this thing is going to be really, really difficult. All I want to do is take it nice and slow, and that wasn't exactly the common mentality back in those days. So Eric and Jason, I know you met at CU, as we heard a little bit earlier from Aaron's introductions. Tell us a little bit about the story. What did you guys do after graduating with the CU engineering degree? And then eventually, I guess, what brought you back together?
Yeah.
Hey, well, first, cheers. Thanks for having us on. Good to be here, and figured we'd start off with a little bit of cream ale. So this is one that really embodies kind of the aviation brand that we've built. And it's just crisp, refreshing, basically a Pilsner style. But 10% of all of these proceeds actually go back to an aviation foundation that we'll talk a little bit more as well. But yeah, wanted to start off. Thanks to everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. To answer your question, Bobby, yeah, CU was a great time. It spawned Jason and I brewing beer in our apartment together. That was kind of the beginning of it. We made really bad beer. You know, it tasted like the other beer we were drinking, but we didn't know any different. And we thought it was fun. Jason, being a chemical engineer, was all about the recipe, the enzymes, the molecular structure of the beer, whereas I was aerospace, more electrical, mechanical focused. I would build him contraptions to control the fermentation process, to kind of control all the other aspects of beer making that's not necessarily the recipe or the hot side brewing process.
Yeah, we kind of quickly nerded out on it, being in the engineering world. So yeah, I took that first experience and then really just dove in. Before too long, yeah, we had all sorts of contraptions all over the house. It was taking up garage space. And we were entering in the homebrew competitions at Mountain Sun and Southern Sun, doing all the Stout Month festivals, and really just enjoying all the aspects of it. and then still trying to, go to school and work on our engineering careers as well.
Over the years, we went and took traditional engineering routes after CU. I went to work for Boeing. Jason was an oil and gas consultant here in Colorado for a couple of years. But beer and airplanes always brought us back together. We'd go a year or so without seeing each other, and then we'd come back and brew a beer or go fly across the country in a small plane, and it would kind of reignite the passion. So it's funny how beer tends to do that. But.
Yeah, that was one of the main things that kind of got us kicking off on the brewery again. Was Eric was moving from Seattle back to Denver after working at Boeing, and he had his grandpa's plane. It was a 1946 Aranca Champ that he had inherited, and we needed to get it from Seattle back to Denver. That turned into a 3.5-day flight. We got passed by more than one Walmart truck and at least one Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. So, that does wonders for the self-esteem. But
a lot of time to think.
Yeah, a lot of time to think and talk. And we loved our engineering jobs, but we were young and still kind of stupid, and figured if we want to open a brewery, and this would be the time to do it.
So Walmart and the Wienermobiles, that's kind of what set you on this path, so to speak. That's great.
It's faster to drive that than it is to fly it in that plane.
Yeah, that's so funny. So you mentioned the plane. I guess maybe while you tell us about the cream ale, tell us kind of how the aviation theme fits in with the whole brewery as a whole. I know that's a big point for the brewery. So I'm curious about this beer the cream ale that we're drinking now, and then also how aviation ties into all of this.
The cream ale fits well into the aviation theme. Part of our company's mission is not just to make beer and be a community gathering place, but we also want to give back to the community. 10% of our profits go back to aviation, be it scholarships or youth organizations or some other method that we haven't found yet. That's always been a cornerstone of ours. Stripes to Bars is an organization that came and found us. And this beer, $1 from every pint sold in the tap room, every crowler goes to scholarships for veterans or transitioning out of the military into the civilian world. And I'll let Jason talk a little bit more about the
Yeah, it was really, the whole aviation brand kind of started just, from Eric and I's passion growing up around it. And one of the things that we bonded over at CU. And as we started looking at all the breweries that were out there, we wanted to set ourselves apart and also do something we were passionate about. So when we were approached by Stripes to Bars for this nonprofit, we wanted that beer that moved quickly and was easy drinking and, fit the crowd that we were aiming it at. And so we settled on a cream ale. Like I said before, it's basically a Pilsner malt profile, single malt and single hop. So relatively simple from the hot side, all the brew day ingredients. And then we put a German ale yeast in it and almost pseudo lager it. So we give it a lot of time at a slightly lower fermentation temperature and really let it condition and clean up nicely. Doing that makes it basically like you're drinking a lager, but it has got all the flavor profiles of a traditional ale. So this is a beer it's been great for us all summer long, our first year, and we're just re-releasing it tomorrow actually, and starting up a whole nother fundraising round for the Stripes to Bars organization.
Yeah, the first round, I think we started this in November, and just one batch of beer, we were able to raise $1,500 for Stripes to Bars, and that's going to go a long ways for a veteran getting their scholarship. So
yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, we're drinking great beer and helping veterans out at the same time. So what else can you want?
Not much more you need.
Yeah, right. Now, how did I know a couple of different questions came in from people when they were signing up. How do you decide on the ingredients? Like, can you walk us through that process a little bit? I mean, you can't just go to a website and say, hey, give me a cool beer, and then it tells you everything that you need to know, right? Or everybody would be doing this. So I've always been really curious about how do you take it from the homebrew point of view to something on this scale and not mess it up?
Absolutely. So yeah, from an ingredient perspective, there are a lot of guidelines that the BJCP puts out. That's kind of the brewer's manual of what each beer style is theoretically supposed to be. So I kind of start there and then play around with ingredients from that jumping off point. So, if we're making a cream ale or an amber or a Russian Imperial Stout, I kind of have a rough idea of what that beer should be. And then from that point, it's me picking flavor profiles. Do I want it to finish sweet or dry? What temperatures do I need to hit? What are the different factors I need from the hops or the malt that will affect the final product of the beer? And then, you mentioned transitioning to this. We went from a 10-gallon homebrew setup to a 500-gallon or 15-barrel brew house. So the first brew day was a little scary, but from a lot of the experience we had at CU, we'd worked with equipment before. It's just a lot more pumps and control systems and a lot less manual lifting. There's still plenty of that, but it runs itself a little bit more. But brewing has always interested me because it gets that nice middle ground between, basically like a cooking and a science. It's, half art and half math, and you can really start to build some cool things from it.
Well, and you can enjoy your creation for a lot longer than cooking a meal too. So
yeah. With everyone else, which is
yeah, of course. It's a social thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. So Eric and I were talking the other day about how he sold me some homebrew equipment when we were leaving school and graduation. He was going to Seattle and I was going down to Florida. So I thought that was kind of fun. He sold me the triple kegerator setup that I actually still have. But I've had 2 girls since I bought that from him. So that's just sitting in my garage attic right now collecting dust. And I'm waiting for you guys to hit it big time so I can make a sizable donation to a museum somewhere.
Well, we could convert that so that it pours FlyteCo beer, no problem.
Oh, that would be great. Then I just need an old refrigerator and I'll be set for a while.
Yeah.
Well, FlyteCo, the Boulder pilot store.
Yep.
Yeah. So you guys told us a little bit about your life after graduation, coming back together. Can you talk about that transition a little bit more, like from your desk job, so to speak, to brewing professionally? I mean, that's not something that you just decide, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then the next day you do it. I can't imagine you're using calculus and ODE 4.5 solvers on a regular basis, but what's a typical day like now, or at least typical before the coronavirus hit?
Being a small business owner, every day is different. There are many hats that you never knew you had that you have to wear. I guess backing up to the starting this place, my path was a little more convoluted. Immediately after CU, I went and got a job at Boeing out in Seattle, worked on the commercial airliners out there, which was great. It was an awesome experience seeing how, the country's biggest export was put together and sold and how that whole business worked. I grew up, my dad was an entrepreneur. I just grew up around small companies, and I never sat in a cubicle very well. I like working with my hands-on, just solving problems, not waiting for permission a lot. So that led me to leave Boeing and come back to Colorado for a startup company, not the brewery, but that got me back out here. Didn't end up working out. Another job didn't end up working out, and by that time I had a spreadsheet of a business plan. What if we started a brewery, and started to look a little bit more into that kind of in between engineering jobs. So that's how the basis of it got started.
Yeah, and it did change a lot. I mean, going from, kind of the desk engineering job to, figuring everything out on the fly, and really having 3 or 4 different aspects of the business that we're responsible for. Obviously focusing on the brewing, making sure we have a great product coming out. But then the day-to-day business side, the problem solving. Eric and I were talking about it earlier, and I think one of the ways we apply most of our engineering education now is not through all the extended math that we spent time learning and really diving into that, but more in just general problem solving. How do we do this in an efficient manner and how do we get to the next piece of the puzzle, and how do we solve this? You know, for our whole first year of opening, and we'll show you in the back when we go through the brew tour. But you know, we're on a startup budget, so money was tight, and every time we looked at a different piece of equipment, we had to ask ourselves, is this something we can do ourselves? And I mean, probably a third of the time the answer was yes. And so we did. We built our own temperature controller. Eric built us a keg washer. We have a lot of pieces that saved us $5,000-$10,000 at a time every time we built it ourselves. So that's a lot of where our engineering education ended up playing into the brewery, especially during the first year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We've actually had several questions that came in about how are you applying your engineering training and the mindset. And it sounds like you're applying it on a day-to-day basis, but then also for very specific problems that come up. So I know I'm really excited to kind of see those things in person. You guys want to jump to a tour of the brewery real quick and maybe hit on some of those cool custom things that you've done?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's figure out how to get our computer to come along with us, and we'll take you for a ride. Spin it around. There you go. Just follow me in the door here. All right, so this is the front door to the business. Every time someone walks in, this is the first view that you see. We wanted to create something that was memorable. There's over 100 breweries in Denver. There's over 300 in Colorado. And the way we thought we would stick out is if people walked right in the door and the first thing they did was take a picture. So we got our 737 sized fuselage. It's about, what is that, 20 feet in diameter and 22 feet long. We've got our runway striping here. So you're coming in for a landing on runway 5 here. The way that runway markings work is you basically add a 0 to the number, and that's the magnetic heading. So this is accurate. This is a heading of 50 degrees as you walk in the door. We made sure to have all the little details as accurate as possible because pilots and engineers will pick us apart for everything. Moving over here is our community table. This is made out of a RV-7 wing. An RV-7 is a 2-person sporty home-built aircraft. This aircraft was in the process of being built and it was never finished. We acquired the parts before it ever flew, so there's no stories here of this airplane having a bad history. It's kind of a cool broken down skeleton view of a wing. So we'll take you for a walk down. On the floor, we've got our taxiway lines that mark all the possible routes that we could possibly take. And then over here is a section of our bar top. This is made out of Marston mat, which is temporary runway material from World War II. 10-foot by 3-foot sections that would just clip together. They would truck in and build a temporary runway in the jungle or in the desert, land a cargo plane the next day. Here we have our flight tray. Those are laser etched by one of the aviation, laser cut and etched by one of the aviation organizations that we support, the Young Aviators. They meet out of Erie, Colorado. It's an organization that gives kids access to projects and flying and just resources to become involved in the industry. We got a pizza and a pretzel here. We do have limited food when we're open, not selling much of that these days. On the floors over here, we got more runway markings, accurate, hold short symbols and everything. And then I'm gonna switch the computer here with Jason and let him take you into the back.
So this is our brew house. This is what I upgraded to from a desk job, which I'm pretty happy about right now. So we have a 15-barrel brew house system. That's 500 gallons of beer. For us, it's been a really good size. You'll see breweries ranging from 2 or 3 barrels all the way up to 150. For us, this size system gives us enough runway where we can hear the glycol kicking on right now. Enough where we can brew a beer and, you know, we have it around for about a month to 6 weeks before we need to brew it again, which makes my life back here a little easier. I only have to brew 2 days a week or so. Some smaller breweries might be brewing 6-7 days around the clock. So for us, it's a nice balance. We have our mash tun. Lights on for it. Basically, this is where all the grain gets put, and we mix with water. Bobby, you had mentioned earlier, you know, using our degrees on the brewing side, do use quite a bit of chemical engineering. To me, this is the quintessential chemi project. You have water chemistry, so we do salt additions for every single batch, and it varies depending on the beer style. So different beers, we want to accent just different characteristics. Gypsum, for example, in the water profile will help bring out hops in a hazy IPA. So we really focus on what do we need for this specific beer and how can we make it the best we can. There's a lot of chemistry that goes into that. There's also a lot of process engineering, temperature control as we go through the brew day, and then move over to our fermenters. We have 4 15-barrel fermenters and 1 15-barrel bright tank out here. You can actually see one of them is actively fermenting that I brewed 2 days ago. So this is the yeast consuming all of the sugars that the grain provided and turning it into carbon dioxide and ethanol, as well as, you know, dozens of other byproducts, some of which we want, some of which we don't. And then those will get consumed later through the brew process to give us our clean finished beer.
I want to talk about our...
Yeah, so we mentioned some of the things we built ourselves. One of them is the glycol temperature control system. So everything that runs the beer that's made here runs off a $50 Raspberry Pi. And
Solid temperatures.
Eric, yeah, these are all temperatures right now. Eric wired this up. We wrote the Python code for it. And then that controls all of the glycol that runs through these jacketed tanks, so that we can set any temperature we want throughout the fermentation process and then through the cold crashing. Then we also built our own keg washer. A lot of the work we do is cleaning. 90% of my job is actually being a janitor. So the keg washer, you know, again, this is something that costs a lot of money, and on our scale, it's not really worth it in our business plan quite yet. So we were able to build this for about 1/10 of the price of buying one commercially. It is semi-manual, and by that I mean it's fully manual, and it works great though. It gives us clean kegs, and, you know, keeps the doors open for us.
We're gonna walk back to our spot here.
Yeah, I love the customizations and the things that you've made, partly to save money, but also in the event that something breaks, you have the service tech right there with you. So you don't have to go on delay and wait for a part to come in or wait for somebody to tell you why it broke and then how to fix it. You just can do that right there, beer in hand. So I think that's a fantastic, very impressive approach. So I admire that a lot.
Yeah. Like I said, we have many hats here, and one of them I gave to myself was the service technician. So I can't ever leave for too long, otherwise there might be something that needs to be fixed.
You know, brewing is one of those things as well. Everyone's heard the engineer joke, right? Where you send them the bill and they ask for an itemized copy because an hour of work costs $50,000, and it's, you know, where to put the X, and just knowing that knowledge. And that's what a lot of this is too. A normal brew day can be very, very easy and everything goes smoothly, but as soon as something starts going wrong, you have to know everything about the process in order to correct it and get it back on track so that you don't waste a batch. Speaking of beers, we got another one here to try.
Yeah.
If it's on their second beer. This is our hazy IPA. So this is a New England style IPA, very trendy the last few years. But for good reason. You know, this is one of those trends that's going to stick around. It's going to be here, you know, in my opinion, pretty indefinitely. It encompasses all of the great aspects of the hops, the flavor, the citrus, all those aromatics, but it's a lot smoother on the back end. It doesn't have that bitter punch that a lot of West Coast IPAs are known for. This outsells everything else 2-1, not just at our brewery, but everywhere across the U.S. This is one of the main styles that's being brewed these days.
This is a style that when people come in and they don't know what to drink and they don't say they like IPAs, this is kind of a fun one to throw them, because a lot of people that don't normally like IPAs will end up liking this because it's not bitter, face puckering beer. It's very smooth. It's drinkable. It's got those fruity, juicy, grapefruity notes, but it's not super in your face about it. It's very easy drinking, if not maybe a little too easy drinking. But
yeah, because it is about 7.5%. A lot of what makes this beer so smooth too is there's a lot of oats and wheat in the grain bill. So it's nice. You have your normal malt characteristics, but then you have this almost creaminess and smoothness that's contributed from those a lot of the proteins that are in the wheat, and it just makes a wonderful finished product. This is one of those beers, we kind of have half core beers, half new rotationals on our menu, and this is one where if I tried taking it off for a couple weeks once, and people got angry very quickly. So this is one that's always on tap now.
We had customers calling daily when it was gone. So yeah, we'll never do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely sense why. I mean, I like IPAs, but I can just imagine even if I didn't like IPAs, this would be a delicious beer to drink. You have all those complex things that you mentioned, Eric, but it's smooth and it just goes down really well. And you also brought up maybe too well. It's too easy to drink, but that's one of the nice things about being in quarantine, right? You can drink as much as you want and you don't have to worry how you're going to get home because you're already there. So cheers to that, at least from my side.
Definitely some perks there.
Yeah, definitely. So related to that, I mean, we're here today, social distancing to the absolute max. Some of it's by choice to help protect others, and some of it's forced. But without getting into the politics, which I know is a common theme at typical happy hours, but can you give us a sense of how your first year in the brewery went? Because I know you celebrated your anniversary like days, if not hours, before the shutdown hit. And then how has everything kind of been after the whole shutdown? And walk us through, I guess, the last year and a couple months. People are very curious how you dealt with it and then how you're dealing with it now.
Well, from startup to building it to figuring out our first year in business, we know nothing besides chaos. COVID was another problem, but we're so used to not knowing what we're doing to constant problems that we're having to solve that it kind of felt normal to have another problem this size.
Yeah, for the first year, brewing became one of the known variables, and it was actually one of the easier pieces of the puzzle. Everything else, it was the social interaction, how our branding goes forth to all the people coming in, what image we're sending them. And then, like Eric said, chaos. I mean, we had a great opening the first few months, and we were going into summer, and then neighborhood and seasonality hit us where August just died. And we were expecting another great month of business. We'd brewed into it pretty strongly, and there was no one here. And everyone was, with families up in the mountains traveling. It was too hot for our patio. There were a lot of issues that we didn't really foresee that were more social and business oriented than brewing oriented. So like Eric said, as COVID came around, this was just kind of another one of the restructurings. We found ways to make the other things work. When we were slow, we started hosting more private events. We started getting a lot more weekly events going to bring our regulars in. We started a membership program so that we can, give back to those that have been, supporting us the strongest. And then as COVID happened, and first of all, we're very, very fortunate because we were allowed to remain open. That first day when we were potentially closed for a day, was crazy. We were so busy as everyone was rushing out. And, even a month after that, businesses stayed steady as more of a liquor store. but for a week and a half, we just reinvented our business almost every single day.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, you brought up that everything was just so crazy initially, and then this is just another thing that keeps the craziness going. And it sounds like you guys have a fantastic mindset, and it's really awesome to hear all that. So there's a question that came in, Cameron, on the Q&A, and it really leads nicely into the third beer here. So I'm going to read this. It says, I've seen a lot of brewery collaborations lately. Do you have any collaboration beers coming out in the near future? Do you have dream breweries you want to collaborate with? So Cameron, hopefully you're on, and hopefully we give you a pretty nice answer to this question.
That is an awesome question and very aptly timed. Our third beer is a collaboration beer. We brewed it. That was supposed to be part of Collaboration Fest, which is a Colorado Brewers Guild beer festival. I highly, highly recommend that beer festival. Unfortunately, got canceled this year, but basically, it's only allowed open to Colorado breweries, and it's only beer that was brewed with another brewery or more, kind of one-off. So it's a beer festival of completely unique beers of people coming together and working together. So we brewed with them the Odyssey of Flyte, which is a Belgian golden strong ale, 7.7%, and it drinks very smooth. I want to give a shout out to another CU alumni, Jeff Tice, who did the artwork. How's that work? For all this. It's basically a timeline of aviation, starting from Da Vinci. You got the Wright Flyer, you got a 747, moving on to the Concorde, and then something a little futuristic, like a drone taxi for the next stage of aviation.
Yeah,
fun beer. I'll let Jason talk about the beer itself.
This is a great beer, Belgian golden strong ale. So it packs a punch, but again, drinks really light. Almost everyone we've given it to, after we've told them the ABV, they go, "Wait, what?" That's can't be right. But it's got a lot of those ester profiles, some of those banana clove flavors that come out. And then what's really cool is you get a lot of pear with some of those esters. And so for half the batch, we actually added Asian pear into the mix. And we used a fruit puree for that. And it turned out great. It's not too fruity, but it finishes very dry, but you get that little extra sweetness to it. So Odyssey is just celebrating their 7th anniversary this weekend as well. So big shout out to those guys. Love Chris and Jake over there in Indiana. And it was great working with them. We actually brewed this beer here, and we were planning to serve it on tap and at the festival. But then with COVID, we decided we would can it, which meant we had to haul all of the kegs. We had to keg it off here, haul all of that over to Odyssey, a couple truckloads worth, put it back into tanks, and then run it through the canning line, and then bring it back over here. So it turned into a bit of a couple of days of work, but we're super proud of the 12-ounce cans, and beer turned out wonderful.
Yeah, we never thought we'd have beer in small cans like this soon. It never really made sense to even look at doing, and now here we are with we figured it out in 2 months of COVID. Kind of forced us to change and do something we never thought we would do. So it's pretty cool. We're talking, scheming even today about putting more of our beers in 12-ounce cans, getting it more widely available to everyone. So
we're doing we always try to have a couple of different collaborations going. It was great to work with these guys. We've worked with Brews Beers a bunch in the past. We've got a kind of a tentative brew day planned with Woods Boss Brewing downtown. Those guys were great to us as we started opening up. And then we've done some with Launchpad as well, which if you guys aren't familiar, they're in Aurora, and they're a rocket ship themed brewery. And we love those guys. Don't tell them we said that, but we do.
It's basically this, but the space theme of aerospace. Then we'll have more fun beers coming out with them. They're very happy we found each other and are nerding out over beer collaborations. Dream collaboration breweries, man. That's a tough one. We've got some good friends, but I mean something like WeldWorks. Those guys have. I don't know, whatever they've done to create a brand and create a following is amazing. Just even to be near that, even to make a beer is as good as they're making. Next to them would be pretty fun. You got a brewery you'd want to?
Man, it's tough to say. My favorite right now is just being able to work with all of the local brewers here in Colorado. So many of them we've talked to over the years, and then just that collaboration aspect makes for such a fun brew day. Something too that I've really noticed about the brewing industry that I've loved is how collaborative the environment is, especially through all of this COVID pandemic. But even before, everyone's willing to help each other out. If you need to borrow parts or use someone's keg washer or just get some general feedback or knowledge, it's all very open and very friendly, which has been a very, wonderful experience. Engineering's not always like that, and for good reason, but it's nice to have that collaboration aspect as everyone just tries to make the best thing they can.
Yeah, that's awesome, guys. So, Eric, it looks like our good buddy Alec here has a couple questions. Well, really just one question that I'll shout out. Is there a Buffs discount at the brewery? I know you guys are alumni. Is there any incentive or extra incentive for fellow alums to come there and check you all out?
There is currently, we have a promotion running through today on our website, but I think we could extend that.
Yeah, we ran this one specifically for this event, but we will be doing another discount code that we'll be sending out through Aaron and the Alumni Association. And so there'll be another one to watch out for. And we want to give back to, the school that gave us so much as well.
Yeah, Alec was very specific in calling it a SCO Buffs discount. So I don't know if you guys can tie that in anyways. But, another question that came up, any professors that really stood out in your time at CU, maybe something that kind of helped you along the pathway of the brewery, things like that?
I have one that I think she's actually on here, Dr. Guerin. Learning about aircraft design has kind of always, that was one of the most interesting classes I've ever taken, being able to kind of look at an airplane and say, why does it look like that? What mission was it designed for? I don't know, that class has always stuck with me, and I'll never forget that. You got one?
I don't know that I have a specific one that jumps out at me right now. I think everyone beat me up pretty evenly.
Isn't that the truth? So Dr. G also had another question. Other airplane names considering for your next brews, and maybe Dr. G's trying to get a part-time job at the brewery, coming up with some great names. Let me read you two that she threw out. Hypersonic Hoppy Ale, Short Takeoff Stout. I guess thoughts on those two, and any other cool names you got kind of in the pike?
I love them both. I think I've heard Hypersonic before, so we wouldn't be the first ones. I absolutely love Short Takeoff Stout. So yeah, probably see that. Yeah.
Very good. Dr. G. You got a part-time gig down there on Tennyson Street.
Absolutely. Naming's
another question came in from Facebook Live here, kind of related to the collaboration. Any thoughts on dabbling in gluten-free with Holla Daily, another CU alumni business? Have you guys heard of them? Thoughts with that?
We currently have Holla Daily on tap. So we've been working with them since shortly after we opened.
Before we opened, actually,
yeah.
Karen, the owner of Holla Daily, has been an awesome resource for us getting up and going. She shared a lot of her business plan with me. We can do gluten reduced beers here. The difference between us and Holla Daily is their equipment has never touched gluten. They use completely alternative grains. They use buckwheat, millet, malted rice. Whereas if we were to make it, we could take out gluten by adding an enzyme that breaks it down. You can't call it gluten-free to the people that are extremely sensitive to it. But that would be a great one.
Yeah,
I would love to work with them.
No, it'd be great to do something with them on a collab scale as well. We've loved having them on tap though, because it's something we feel that they do very, very well. So we want to keep doing what we do and, kind of supplement our lineup with them. So they're, other than our collabs, they're the only other beer that we've ever brought onto our tap list.
Yeah, that's great. Looks like another, so for all of you out there, this is kind of the Q&A part. So feel free to type your questions somewhere on Facebook Live. They'll relay them to us. Q&A session here on Zoom. We'll try to get to those. So looks like Dr. G, again, she mentioned that she is willing to settle some of her great airplane names for a t-shirt like mine, actually. So what kind of cool apparel? I mean, you guys have an outstanding logo down there. It's really, it's aerospace-y, it's hip, it's cool. Tell us about some of the apparel that you guys have going on.
Yeah, that shirt that you're wearing, the logo is the airplane that Jason and I were flying across the country in, the 1946 Champ. So that's kind of the origins of our logo. We've got some other merch. These are our ambassador hats that we have a crew of about 10 to 15 social media ambassadors that get these hats. Jason's wearing a Fly Good, Don't Suck t-shirt. That's a saying among air show pilots, basically, do good, don't do bad. Also, if you do a bad job, it's usually not very good for flying. But
yeah, no, we've got a lot of merch going right now. We're part of this this whole switch and having to shut down the tap room during the pandemic. We got a lot of things done that we might have put off for a year or two. Like, we have a fully functional Shopify account where everything can be ordered online and ahead of time, and it's really streamlined things, especially with to-go orders. But it's a whole nother avenue to our business that it's supporting us now, but then it'll be this great addition as things go slightly more back towards normal. So.
Yeah, that's great. Another comment here from Lewis on Facebook. Very cool Flyte trays. Reminds me of using the laser cutter in the ITLL basement. So shout out to anybody that works at the ITL or is familiar with the ITL. I know Eric and I and Jason, I'm sure you've spent some time there as well. So the merchandise, is it available online?
Yep. Everything that we have is available on our online store. FlyteCoBeer.com is our store. You can even buy beer on there and pick it up in the store, or if you live close to the brewery, we'll come deliver it to you. But yeah, that was one of the things that we got set up within the first week of COVID, was having that ability to sell things online. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I got another question here that kind of relates to the collaboration, but on a otherworldly scale, if you will. So Louis Groswald is asking, can we get a partnership between FlyteCo and Bioserve Space Technologies, which is part of the CU Aerospace, to fly some yeast on the International Space Station, brew the results back on the ground? And he's already claimed the name Space Buff Ale. So maybe that part is up for debate. And I guess thoughts on sending some of your creation to outer space.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, we're all about that. That'd be fantastic.
All for it.
Louis, hopefully you heard that answer. We can rely on you to help make that connection. So cool stuff, guys. Yeah, let's see. What are some other questions here?
One of the ones I saw come in earlier was talking about home brewing and what a home brewer can do as kind of what's the best way to increase the quality of their beer. And this was something I learned, probably 10 years ago at a Great American Beer Fest. It's all the cold side fermentation. So yeah, you can focus on your recipe or take whatever kit you have if you're extract brewing, but then really focus on the fermentation side. That was the first place that Eric and I spent all of our time and energy on, was building something temperature controlled. You need to make the yeast happy. And if you're doing that, really most beer recipes will turn out pretty good. So that's 90% of the battle.
And sanitizing.
And sanitizing.
Yeah.
Oh, cleaning, just lots of cleaning.
Yeah, that's important, of course. Another question here from Kevin on the Q&A. What was the most difficult part of starting the brewery? Was there any fear about the business side of the brewery, or maybe not making good beer starting off? How did you prepare for the unknowing?
There's no way to prepare. You just kind of take it day by day. The beer turned out well. I think that was probably the easiest part. Jason absolutely did a great job scaling up from 10 gallons to 500 gallons without much of a problem. It's all the business stuff. We're two engineers. We didn't go to business school. We learned how to solve technical problems. We didn't learn how to go raise money or secure real estate or write contracts. That was all really hard. Although we have a great base for it. It's all, stuff based in logic that we could eventually figure out.
Yep.
And with some guidance,
Oh yeah,
down. But
to
yeah,
echo that, yeah. I think raising money and just the initial stage of the business, whether or not it was the hardest, took the longest. We spent 3+ years looking for the right space, looking for money, and those two things never seemed to line up from a timing perspective. So there was a lot of, cool, we've got investors and we don't have any place to put their money right now. And then they'd walk and we'd have the opposite problem. Construction was a lot of decision making, but actually fairly streamlined because you're working with so many good people. We picked a great architect who also happened to be a pilot. This fuselage that we're standing in is actually his brainchild as a way to break up what essentially amounts to a huge warehouse and what used to be an auto garage. But we had a great architect, a wonderful construction crew. And so they help guide you through a lot of the process of actually seeing your dream come to reality. It was, in my opinion, those initial steps. As for being, worried about the business, pretty much every day. Yeah.
We opened a brewery in the most competitive craft brewery market in the world. There's more density in Denver than there is anywhere else. I was told I'm crazy to my face more than 10 times. So, you gotta learn to deal with a lot of no's and a lot of stops and false starts. And just the biggest part is just, if you just keep going, wake up, put another foot in front of the other foot, it eventually happened.
Yeah. And we went through a lot of that in the whole first year we had our business plan and that was great in theory, but everything changes really quickly and you got to figure things out on the fly. So it was, okay, we're making good money, but we're also running way too fat. So how do we start to cut a lot of the things that, we need to figure out what makes most sense from a business perspective now that we have things dialed in. So we've gotten a lot better at that. And now, through this whole pandemic, we rebuilt our whole business plan yet again. So our whole revenue and cost stream changed quite a bit, but we found a way that we can make it work. So we're lucky that we're smaller and we can pivot pretty quickly. I think it's much tougher as a bigger distributing brewery right now. So I feel pretty fortunate to be the scale we are.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll echo that comment, Eric. I mean, you guys are crazy. You're totally crazy, but I think that's what the world needs, right? You need crazy people with crazy ideas, but that also have a can-do attitude, and it's very clear that's what you guys have. So, totally admiring that. Got a couple more questions here. So, something about, do you schedule food trucks? Any hope of food while you're drinking down at FlyteCo?
Yeah, we share the building with a restaurant, so there's always food available. They will, it's called Barbed Wire Reef. They'll run food over if you order it there. Kind of acts as a permanent food truck. And then, yes, about once a week or so on the busier days, we'll get food trucks in. We're starting to get to the point where, we're a desirable destination for food trucks to start. We got one coming on the 23rd. So it's next weekend? Mm-hmm. Very popular Asian or Korean barbecue coming here that we're getting set up with our beer drive-through. But hopefully this summer when we're open, we'll have a little bit more options. if anyone's got any recommendations of what they want or a good food truck, we'd happily talk to them.
Yeah. We always have something available though.
Yeah, we'll put those in the chat, and hopefully we can get this chat saved. There's a lot of good information there. So a quick question from the Q&A. This is really just a yes or a no, and I think the answer is yes. Do all beer brewers have beards?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Yes, so that was the quickest one of the Q&A.
Funny story around that, Bobby. We went to the Craft Brewers Conference in Nashville, and this was 2.5 years ago now. And we walked in there and looked around, and every single one was wearing a flannel shirt, had a beard, and a hat for their brewery. And it got to the point where I was looking for our other business partner, Morgan, and I was like, hey, oh, you're not Morgan. You know what? You're close enough. Like, you'll probably know it was, yeah, we definitely all look the part.
Sounds like a great place for a Gillette commercial, huh? So another one from James here. This kind of gets back to the other beer that we tasted. Hazy IPAs and milkshake IPAs have been all the rage lately. What do you foresee will be the next beer trend in craft beer styles?
Yeah, so hazy IPAs I don't think are going away. I think that'll be another staple beer that gets added for the foreseeable future. The milkshake IPAs might come and go. We'll see. Not my particular cup of tea there. As for the next big styles, our industry is always changing. We saw sours for a while. We've seen the hazies. Seltzers are love it or hate it. One of the next main things that's going to hang around. It's that new refreshing beverage. It's light, easy to drink, flavorful, appeals to, almost everyone. I think something we've seen along with it, more on the beer aspect, is a move back towards more sessionable beers. So for a while, it was stronger, hoppier, bigger Russian Imperial stouts that were all moving a lot faster. And now we're starting to see those 4.5% beers come back into play, where people want that light, easy drinking. I want to come have a couple of these, not just sip on 4 ounces of some crazy sour anymore.
Better for you category and alcohol is growing very popular right now. That's the seltzers, that's the gluten-frees, that's the low carb beers. Right now, I think that's kind of the trend. What particular niche style of flavor, that's kind of the fun part, because you never really know. It's like next week we might be making a pastry stout with cherries and Rice Krispie treats and whatever, because that's popular.
Let's see. Got a question here from Kellan. Is there anything you know now that you wish you would have known when you graduated or when you started the business? Loaded question there. Take your time.
Yes, there is.
I wish I knew how hard it was to start a business. Actually, I don't. Because if I knew how long it was going to take and how stressful and it would have been, I don't know if we ever would have done it. So maybe a little bit of ignorance was good in that sense. I don't know. Working with teams was pretty well covered at CU. It's sales and just all the stuff I never went to school for.
Yeah, I think reaching out to the other experts in the industry has been a huge benefit to us. And so I think it's something, even starting the business, we could have benefited even more from. We talked to some other brewers, and I think we did a good job of planning our space and our business around what we'd seen work and not work at other places. But even more of that would have been great. There's so many things, just 6 months into the business we saw and looked at, we're like, man, I wish we would have added this in the beginning. It would have made life so much easier. It wouldn't have cost that much, but it's going to cost a lot or hurt now to do it. So there's a lot of those things that we think about every day.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, looks like Aaron here is chatting that it's time to get this wrapped up. I mean, we could keep talking for another hour and a half if you let us here, Aaron, but I know that people are under time constraints. And so I guess we'll turn it over to you for whatever you have to say to close us out.
Awesome. Well, this was so fun, you guys. I really appreciate you kind of leading us through this tour and showing us your space and telling us a little bit about your story. This was really fun and very informative, so we super appreciate it. And for everyone who was able to join us, thank you so much for spending your Thursday evening virtually with us and some of your fellow alumni. I hope you all had as much fun as we did.